So factoring is the opposite of distributing. And I will give you examples. 3 times 2x minus 1. We distribute, which a lot of people will do this. So they remember to distribute to both terms. And so 3 times 2x is 6x, and 3 times 1 is 3. So 6x minus 3 after you distribute. Factoring is the opposite. So factoring is starting with the 6x minus 3 and saying, in this case, we'd say factor out a common factor. What number divides into both of these two numbers? And that would be 3. So we would factor out a 3. And then we'd ask ourselves, what would we need to distribute in order to end up back with this 6x minus 3? So 3 times 2 is 6, and 3 times 1 is 3, if you were to go like this. So it's the opposite. You're starting with the answer and you're working backwards. So factoring is the opposite of distributing. And in this case, we would call this factoring out a common factor. Common factor. I'll just say factor out. Factor out a common factor and you have one set of parentheses. In the next examples, we're going to be factoring a polynomial, so I'll show you what that means. So let's start by distributing first, like I did in the last example. So some of you learned FOIL, F-O-I-L. It's just a way, I like to just say you're just distributing basically, but you're distributing like this. You're saying x times x is x squared, x times 6 is 6x. So you distributed this x to both of those. And then 4 times x, 4x, and 4 times 6 is 24. Now, more correctly, negative 4 times positive 6 is negative 24. And so the reason that some people say FOIL is because I multiply the first two terms that are in the parentheses, the first term in this parenthesis times the first term in this parenthesis. So first, then I did the outer two, the ones on the outside, then the inner two, and then the last two. I prefer to just say you're distributing both terms. Now here we have these like terms that can be combined. So you get x squared plus 2x, because you've got 6 minus 4, minus 24. And that's a polynomial. It's more specifically, it's a trinomial because there are 3 terms. Anything more than 2, we just say poly, meaning many, so it's a polynomial. And so you'd be asked, for example, to factor this. We already know the answer looks like this. But if you're trying to factor this, notice that we have 2 parentheses. In the previous example, we just factored out a common factor, so we just had 1 parenthesis. Here we're factoring a polynomial. So we start with x times x, which is x squared. Now we're looking for 2 numbers that multiply makes 24. So we have choices. We could say 3 times 8 is 24. We could say 1 times 24. We could say 2 times 12 is 24. And we could say, 4 times 6, which we know is the right answer because we're working backwards here. So how do I know it's not 3 times 8? Because 3 times 8 makes 24, and x times x makes x squared. It's the outer and the inner that we derive this 2 here. So 8 times x is 8x. 3 times x is 3x. 8x and 3x together, if you add them, you get 11. If you subtract them, you get 5. So there's no way you're going to get a 2. So this can't be the right factorization. This one's 24 times x and 1 times x. So you've got a 24x and a 1x, which together either makes 25 if you add it, or 23 if you subtract it. That's not going to get me a 2. This is 12 times x, which is 12x, and 2 times x, which is 2x. Together, 12x and 2x makes 14 if you add it, 10 if you subtract it. That's not going to work. And of course, here we have 6x and 4x, and 6x minus 4x is 2x. So I need this to be a 6x minus a 4x in order to get the 2x in the middle. And notice that positive 6 times negative 4 is negative 24. So again, if I was to multiply this out, which I've already done up here, you'll see that you end up with this. So that's how you factor. Factoring is the opposite of distributing. So I'm just going to give you two more examples, and I'm going to give you a second. You can just pause the video, try it on your own. So let's start with this. X squared plus 1x minus 12. Notice I said 1x, but I didn't write 1x. You can certainly put a 1 here if you want to. It won't change anything. Now I'm asking you to factor it. So pause the video and try that. Okay, so you want to start with x and x, because x times x is x squared, so that takes care of this. And now we've got to make 12. You've got choices. You could try 2 times 6. You could try 3 times 4. You could try 1 times 12. These combinations are all going to change. I'll just write it out so you can see everything here. I'm just trying different combinations. Notice that every one of these is going to get me x squared, and every one of these will get me a 12. 2 times 6, 3 times 4, 1 times 12. They all make 12. It's the combination of the outer and the inner that we're trying to make a 1x with. So you've got 6x here and 2x here. 6 plus 2 is 8. 6 minus 2 is 4. There's no way I'm going to get a 1, so that can't be the right answer. This is 4x and 3x, and 4 minus 3 is 1, so this will get me the right answer. And you can see here 12 and 1 is 13 or 11, so this won't work. So this has got to be it. Now I've just got to determine my signs. The signs have to be different, because the only way to get a negative 12 is if one of them is negative and one of them is positive, because a positive times a negative is a negative. I notice that this is positive, so the larger one, the 4 minus 3, equals positive 1. And so, of course, you can check these. X times x is x squared. X times 4 is 4x. Negative 3 times x, negative 3x. And negative 3 times 4, negative 12. Combine these two like terms. 4 minus 3 is 1x. And so I have the right answer. And you can always check your answer on a quiz or a test. You know if you factored it correctly by multiplying it out. Because, again, distributing is the opposite of factoring. Let's try another example. Plus 15. And you are factoring. So pause the video. Try that. Okay, so we've got x and x. What can make 15? We can do 3 times 5. That seems like an obvious one. We also have 1 and 15. That's my only other choice. And again, 3 times 5 makes 15. X times x is x squared. Same thing here. 1 times 15 is 15. The combination to get this middle is the outer and the inner. So here we've got 5x and 3x, which together, if you add them, is 8x. If you subtract them, it's 2x, and that's not going to work. So this has got to be it right here. So this is positive, which means it must be positive times positive or negative times negative, because negative times negative is positive. And if I add negative 15x with a negative 1x, I get negative 16x. So that's the correct factorization of this polynomial. Okay? Trinomial, because it has 1, 2, 3 terms. We call it a polynomial. The factoring in this video is pretty simple, because if you notice, I always had a 1 as what I call the leading coefficient. Same thing here, I had a 1. That makes the factoring kind of easy. It can be a little more complicated when you change that first one, and so I'm going to make another factoring video where this leading coefficient is a greater number. And that's it.